Our fishing communities are struggling due to decreasing fish populations and increasing restrictions. One environmentally friendly alternative to fin fishing is to cultivate mussels. But there's a problem that's holding this industry back. Imagine yourself as a young shellfish growing up on a mussel farm. You're hanging onto a rope, suspended from a raft, and suddenly it starts jerking up and down. While you're hanging on for dear life, you're also supposed to do things like eat your dinner and procreate. That's the problem that this industry is facing. Ocean waves interrupt feeding and can shake mussels off of the ropes and even destroy rafts, decreasing harvests by up to 50%. I've teamed up with a local mussel farmer to change that. I'm investigating a submersible mussel raft whose pontoons can be flooded until the whole thing is underwater and held up by buoys. And this is a totally novel system. So I began by implementing a numerical model where I essentially break everything down into small pieces in a way that can accommodate the large displacements and nonlinear hydrodynamics on each element. And I verified this with wave tank experiments. And this is where my research got really interesting. I discovered that we could lower the natural frequencies of the system so they were outside the range of ocean wave frequencies. Picture a weight bouncing around on a spring. If you replace that with a heavier mass and use, say, a slinky instead of a stiff spring, it wants to oscillate with a much lower natural frequency. That's essentially what we've accomplished by flooding the pontoons and having only buoys at the surface. We've made it so that the system doesn't have time to respond to the wave forcing and thus doesn't absorb any significant energy from storms. Because of this, the raft was able to survive one of the worst winters we've had in decades with no structural damage. In fact, the only problem came at harvest time when the fishermen noticed that the buoys were almost underwater. See, the raft was designed to, based on the weight of mussels typically harvested from surface rafts. But these mussels, since they hadn't been hanging on for dear life all winter, had time to spread out and get into an optimal arrangement for feeding and growth. So instead of 100 pounds per mussel rope, they were harvesting 300 pounds of mussels per rope. This is more than enough to turn this into a sustainable livelihood for these fishermen and help transform a struggling American industry.